Chapter 6, Section 4, Athens and Sparta, two cities in conflict. Our main idea for this section is that the two most powerful city-states in Greece, Sparta and Athens, had very different cultures and became bitter enemies in the 400s BC. All people are different. Because of their backgrounds, people place different values on different things. How are some of your values different from those of some of your friends? Questions to think about and explore throughout this section. How did Athens differ from Sparta? What was the result of the war between Athens and Sparta? Key terms that will be defined for you through the Google Classroom will be plague and blockade. Key places to understand and know where they are Sparta, Persia, and Marathon. Please make sure to have your Google Doc open through the Google Classroom and be ready to answer the questions that are in that doc. Make sure to submit once you have completed answering the questions when you have finished this video. The boy stood still and straight beside his companions as their trainer approached. "You!" the trainer barked. "Are you sick? Don't think you'll get out of sword practice. And why are you holding your belly? Are you hiding something?" The trainer gave the boy's cloak a sharp tug. It fell to the ground, freeing a fox that streaked off into the underbrush. The boy sank down to the ground, shaking. His cloak was a crimson red. His side was shredded with deep cuts and bites. The boy had stolen the fox and hidden it beneath his cloak. Later, the boy died from his wounds. The people of his city, Sparta, celebrated his life. He had endured terrible pain without giving any sign of his distress. To the Spartans, this was the sign of true character. A Spartan life. This Spartan story of the boy and the fox may be true or not, yet it tells us much about the people of Sparta, a city-state in southern Greece. If the life of the citizens of Athens was free and open, the life of the citizens of Sparta was quite the opposite. Life in Sparta was harsh and even cruel. The Spartans themselves were tough, silent, and grim. Sparta's army easily equaled Athens in the 400s BC. However, Sparta never came close to equaling Athens' other achievements. A different kind of city. In its early days, Sparta seemed to be developing as the other Greek cities were. Then, in the 600s BC, wars inside and outside the city led to changes in government and the way people lived. The changes turned Sparta into an awesome war machine. The city-state made one basic rule: always put the city's needs above your own. Early in its history, the Spartans conquered the land around their city. They turned the conquered people into helots or slaves. Helots did all the farm work on the land owned by Spartan citizens. This left the Spartans free to wage war. However, the helots far outnumbered the Spartans. Living in fear of a helot revolt, the Spartans turned their city into an armed camp. They treated the helots very harshly. Growing up in Sparta. The life of every Spartan was in the hands of the government from the very first moment of life. Only the healthiest children were raised. This was because the Spartans wanted only the healthiest males as its soldiers. Training began early. At 7, a Spartan boy left his mother to live in the barracks with other boys. His training continued for the next 13 years. By the age of 12, a boy had spent long hours practicing with swords and spears. He had only one cloak and a thin mat to sleep on. He could hardly live on the food he was given, so he was urged to steal. This was to help him learn how to live off the land during a war. However, if the boy was caught, he was severely punished. After all, if a soldier was caught stealing, he would probably be killed. Boys were expected to bear pain, hardship, and punishment in silence. Like their brothers, girls also trained and competed in wrestling and spear throwing. No one expected the girls to become soldiers, but Spartans did believe that girls who grew up strong and healthy would have strong, healthy children. Spartan women had a somewhat better life than women in other Greek city-states. They were allowed to own land and even to take part in businesses. Spartan life lacked the beauty and pleasures found in Athens and some other Greek cities. But Spartan warriors were known for their skill and bravery. The Spartan fighting force played a key role in the Greek wars against the Persians, which are a people who lived across the Aegean Sea east of Greece. The Persians invade. Much of the history of the Greeks tells of wars they fought amongst themselves. But near the beginning of the 400s BC, a new threat loomed. This was the growing might of Persia. By 520 BC, the Persians had already gained control of the Greek colonies on the west coast of Asia Minor, found here. In the fall of 490 BC, a huge force of thousands of Persians landed in Greece itself. They gathered at Marathon, which is about 25 miles north of Athens. The Athenians hastily put together a small army. The Persians outnumbered them by at least 2-1. For several days the army stared tensely at each other across the plain of Marathon. Then, without warning, the Athenians rushed the Persians, who were overwhelmed by the furious attack. By the time the battle was over, the Athenians had killed 6,400 Persians and lost only 192 soldiers themselves. In a few hours, this tiny city-state had defeated the giant that had come to destroy it. After Persia, the Athenian Empire. After several more battles, the Persians were finally defeated. The influence of Athens spread over much of eastern Greece. Athens joined itself with other city-states and supported democratic groups within them. In time, these cities became more like subjects than allies. Sparta and Athens at war. Athens may have been a democracy at home, but it began to act unfairly towards other city-states. At first, the allies had paid tribute to Athens for protection in case the Persians caused more trouble. But later, Athens used this money for the Parthenon and other projects. In response, the people of these city-states began to fear and resent Athens' power. They looked to Sparta, which had not joined the alliance, to protect them. In 431 BC, Athens and Sparta went to war. This conflict lasted for 27 years. It is called the Peloponnesian War, because Sparta was located in the Peloponnesus, or southern part of Greece. The fall of Athens. Early in the war, Athens was struck by a plague, or widespread disease. By the time the plague ended 5 years later, about one-third of Athens' people had died from it. Among the dead was Pericles. Athens never recovered from its losses during the plague. In 405 BC, the Spartans staged a blockade in which they surrounded and closed the harbor where Athens received food shipments. Starving and beaten, the Athenians surrendered in 404 BC. The victorious Spartans knocked down Athens' walls. Athens never again dominated the Greek world. This is the end of section 4. Please make sure you can answer a few questions. How was the life of citizens of Athens more free and open than the life of citizens of Sparta? 2. What events led to the war between Athens and Sparta? And finally, how did the attitude of the people of Athens lead to their own downfall? Make sure you can answer all of those questions. Make sure that you have completed the questions that are in your Google Doc and you've submitted through the Google Classroom. Once you have done this, we'll see you in class tomorrow. And as always, be excellent to one another.